If you want to make an original end-to-end machine learning project, here is one. We are going to do a sentiment analysis on a game reviews, and we will be collecting these reviews from the Steam website. So this project consists in doing the web scraping of reviews from the Steam website, and we'll do it from the Palworld game. Then we will clean and transform this data and apply the basics of natural language processing. After that, we will do a sentiment analysis on these reviews to try to understand if the reviews of this game are good or bad, and then we will visualize some of these results at the end of the project. This video targets towards the beginners in data science, machine learning and data analytics, but we will also cover a couple of advanced topics in here, so I'm sure that you have interest in this. And if you'd like, this is an original project that you can add to your portfolio, so feel free to add your own methods and coding. And by the way, if you want to skip the web scraping, feel free to download the data in the description. And if you need any help, feel free to leave a comment below, because me or anyone in the community will try to help you. Let's jump into it. Jumping into the Steam website, we are going to do this with the Palworld reviews. And basically, if you go to this tab, you can see that the reviews are displayed in this way. And I will show you how can you web scrape all of this data. But first, let's jump into the notebook. And we want to start by importing a lot of the libraries that we'll be using. And basically, we are going to do the web scraping with Selenium. And please install the 4.9 version, because for the code that I wrote here, you will need this version. Then we are going to use some of this package to do the data cleaning and transformation. We will also use the NLTK for the natural language processing. At the end, we will also use a word cloud to display the most used words, and of course a little bit of visualization. Regarding the web scraping, we are going to use the Edge WebDriver. If you want to use this too, you open the Edge and you insert this URL to check the version of your Edge. And here you will find the version of your Edge, also 64 bits. Because once you copy this URL to download the Edge WebDriver, you can download the last stable version for the version that you have in your Edge. Then the first thing that we are going to set is the URL of the website that we want to scrape. And for that, we also want the game ID of the game that we are scraping. And you can find that in here. So this is the ID of the game. So you copy this one and you use it in here. Then we want to set the URL template. So URL underscore template. It will be assigned to, and we come back again to the Steam website. And here you want to do the following. So in show, you want the most recent. Here you can keep all. And the language, you select again the English, because this way it will be displayed in the URL and we need it for our data set. You copy this URL and then you paste it here as a string. But here we will use curly brackets. And why? Because we want to set the URL equal to URL template dot format game ID. And if you print the URL, we have here our URL. And why you want to do this? Basically because you may want to do this with any other game and you just need to change the game ID. Or if you want to collect reviews from several games, you can do it with a list of game IDs. Now moving forward, we want to set a couple of options for our WebDriver. And to do that, we are going to use the MES Edge. So you set options, assign to Edge options. And one of the options that we will use is the Chromium. So options, you set use Chromium to true. Another thing that we want to use is to set up the language in our user agent. Because if you do that to the English language, you can see that the Steam will have the text in English. And that's useful for the way we are dealing with the data here. What I'm talking about is this data. So posted on February, recommended, and so on. This will be the default language if you set this option. Then we set that our driver will be assigned to the driver with these options. So it will be driver. Then want the driver to maximize the windows. And then we say driver.get URL. And once you run this, the driver will open with the Steam website. Let's do it. Okay, edge options not defined, so something is wrong here. So of course we need to run this. Let me know if you have any trouble with this package. Then we run again the URL, and then we run again the driver. So options not defined, of course. Oh, there is a typo here. I should use options. And now we have our WebDriver with the Steam website. To close it, you should close it here, and then while we don't have more code, you can do driver.quit and run this. So you don't have any kind of conflict. Then we want to set two functions that will help us doing the web scraping. And for this, we'll use a kind of method from the driver that allow us to use the scroll bar using a little bit of JavaScript. But don't fear it will be very simple. So let's define two functions. The first one is to get the current scroll position. So let's define it. And why are we going to run this? If we go again to our Steam website and we do that in the console, window.page y offset, we get 0. This is the current position of the page. If you run this again, I need to press enter, we keep getting the position of the page. So here is 0, of course, and here the more we scroll, the bigger the number of the page. So let's clean this and come back again to our notebook. And this is the first function that we need. Then we need another function that will perform a JavaScript script to scroll the web page down. And why? Because to get the reviews, we need to scroll down so it can load more reviews for our web scraper. So let's define a function to scroll to bottom. And another thing is that we are going to put a time sleep of 1 second so we can wait for the reviews to be loaded. And if we want to try this one, we can press this. It will keep doing the scroll to the bottom. So these commands are very useful if you have a situation like this for a web scraping project. And now we will need more functions, but first let's implement the logic for the web scraping. So let's add another cell. And in this cell, we will implement a loop to keep interacting with the web page and retrieve the information that we need. And we will declare 3 variables here. These first 3 variables are the reviews, because we will store our reviews inside the list. The Steam ID set, we want a set of unique values for our IDs of these reviews, because we don't want to have duplicates. And then we'll set a max scroll attempts to 5. Next, we are going to do an error handling by saying try. Our code will go here, and then exception as E, and print E to see if we have any error, and then finally driver.quit. So in case we have any error in our web scraping process, we will always close this driver. Quit, not quits. And now in here, inside of the try, we are going to code the logic to retrieve the data from the website. So the first thing that we want to do is to grab the current position or the initial position in the web page. We call the get current scroll position that we just write above. Then we set another variable which is running, set to true. While this variable is true, we are keep going to run this loop that will follow while running. So while running is true, while true, it will run the following code, which is where we are going to grab our data. And the first thing that we are going to grab is the cards inside of the web page. So basically we will look for this class AppHubCard. So this is the class that we want. So every card, every one of these cards will have this class, and we want to grab them all. So to do that, let's write cards Then imagine that we have 20 cards in here in the first iteration. We want to grab the data from each one of those cards. And what do we do for that? A loop. Well, what I just coded here, we want that each card in cards, and in here I'm setting the last 10 cards because it will grab a lot of cards as soon as it keeps scrolling, and we want only the last couple of ones, and we can even change it to 20. I'm not sure how many cards happens each time we scroll, but we do that for the last 20 cards that are displayed. We want to grab a card, and for each one of those cards we want to grab the Steam ID, and this Steam ID we will use a function here that I will explain in a little bit, because we will grab the Steam ID and we will check if that Steam ID is inside of the Steam ID set. If it is already inside that set, it means that we already got that data, so we will continue. This way we avoid to have duplicates. Else we go to set the review equal to the scrape review data, which will also define it here, and we'll append the review to the reviews list. So now let's define our functions. We want to grab the ID from here, so we will get basically the AppHub friend block, and then we'll grab from the, let's say, div second href a, we'll grab this ID for the user. And to do that, let's do a snap transition, and this is how you get the Steam ID. Now let's go to the scrape review data. So the first element that we are grabbing from our reviews will be the date. So to grab this date, we'll get the class date posted and the text from it. And to do that, let's go here. And with this code we get the date from that data. So basically we go to the card that we will receive in the function. As you remember, we'll get it here. We'll receive the card, and with the card we find the element by the XPath. And using this is one of the main things that is important to use the Selenium 4.9. And then we insert the XPath for that function. Basically then we use that element and get the text and use true. And after getting the element, we get the text. And we can do this for the remaining data that we want. So for example, right now we want this class. So this data from this early access review. And for that, let's write the same logic. But now we have a different case. And let me try to identify one. So for example, we are not grabbing this product refunded, but we are grabbing another information that you can use the same logic to get that product refunded. So basically what we want to select now is this product received for free. So we want to grab this class received compensation, and to do that, this is not always shown. So we want to make a trial. So we go here and write So we try to catch this class name received compensation text. If we can't find this element, we'll set it to null or empty. So this next part is a little bit tricky, and I will show you a logic that you can implement to retrieve this data. But basically, when you go to discard and you want to get this data, so the review text, this is a little bit tricky to get this BR text. So we are going to do a trick to grab this data. So what we want to do is to grab this class AppHub underscore card text content. But the problem here is that we are grabbing the entire data of this card or this class. So as you can see, it is selected, it has all the data, and we will set a variable equal to all of this data. But then we are going to clean it, and to do that we will implement a logic to, let's say, replace the data that we already found and replace it by none. So basically we are going to set that our review text will be assigned to that entire data, and then we will retrieve or delete the data from the receive compensation element, the early access review element, and also the date posted. Let's do it. And that's a way that we come up to remove or clean that text before insert it into the list of reviews. Now we want to retrieve or calculate the number of characters inside the review. And to do that is very simple as well. And finally, let's retrieve the temp recommendation, recommended or not, and as well the number of hours on record. And for that, and the final thing to do is to return all of these data. So return I think that's all. So I think I'm only missing here in this try except. Let's implement this no such element exception. So if you find that there is no such element when we are looking for the receive compensation class, we are going to set it to null. So moving forward with our web scraping logic. Right now we have a very good logic to scrape the data from each card that we see in the web page. But now we are still missing a little bit of logic to keep scrolling down until the end of the page. And for that, let's implement the following logic. So we set the scroll attempt to 0, let's start with 0 attempts, and while the scroll attempt is smaller than the max scroll attempt, we will scroll to the bottom and we'll get the current position after we scroll. And basically, what's the logic that we have here? So if the current position is equal to the last position, we'll increase the scroll attempt and wait a couple of seconds. And we check if the current position is bigger or equal to 3, we set the running to false, and we break this loop and the while running stops run, and we close this. This is because we reach the end of the web page. Otherwise, we set the last position equal to the current position and break this while loop. Now, I think we have everything in place and we can start collecting the data. So let's try it. Let's see if there is no error here. So here I will comment this and we'll run everything from the beginning. So there is an error here. Let's check where it is, and basically I know why, because in my native language class is with an E, so this is a typo for me. I wrongly wrote class with an E and it is without an E. So let's run this again from the beginning and we should see this working. And There it is. Our web scraping is working, and it will take a while to collect the reviews of this game because there are quite a big number of reviews. If you have been following this tutorial in your computer, let me know your feedback in the comments. It will help me a lot to understand if this is clear, if you have any trouble or not, and I will try to help you. And as this will take a while, let's do a snap transition. Now that we have our reviews, let's make a data frame with them. So for that, let's go df equal to pd.dataframe, and then let's use the reviews list, and then let's build the columns. And if we take a look at our data with df.head, we can see that we have our data here. So the column early access, the column review text, review length, play hours, and date posted. And right now we can start thinking of how can we clean it. And for that, let's also take a look at the df.info. So we can see the data types that we have here. Of course, they are almost all objects, so we need to clean this up and transform it. But before that, let's also take a look at the shape. So we have here 50,000 reviews. And right now, let's take a look at the number of recommended and not recommended, using the Plotly Express and the bar plot. Well, wrong column. I want to do this with the review. Alright, here it is. 1500 recommended, and how many not recommended? 758. Okay, having this in mind, let's say that this game is becoming very popular and we have very large amount of recommendations. Now one thing that we want to clean is the play hours. So we want to eliminate this string and convert this to float. Let's do that. And right now, if you take a look at our data, the play hours are already in float, and that's great. Now, moving on to the next column, we want to clean the date posted. And first of all, let's apply the same logic to remove the posted, and then we will process the date. So let's go. Now, if you check again our data, it is already as we wanted. The next thing to do is to create a dictionary to say the month, and well, the next thing to do is to create a dictionary so we can map all the months of the year. So basically here we only have February and January, but let's make a whole dictionary for the entire year with the snap transition. So the next thing to do is to process again the date posted, and this time we will separate the day and the month into extra columns. And this is what I mean. So right now we have two extra columns, day and month. Now what we want to do is to map the month with the dictionary that we created above. Right now we have our month also correct, so we have the number of the month. And the last thing to do is to create a new column with the date format that we want and also convert it to datetime. Let's do it with the snap transition. So as you can see here, we transform to the format that we wanted and also converted to the datetime. And lastly, we dropped the columns day and month. The result of this processing is to have a date posted column with the date format that we wish. And lastly, let's save this data frame as CSV. In case you haven't done the web scraping, you can download this data frame from the description. Now in the natural language processing, we are covering some basics. The first one is to remove the stop words. Stop words are words that doesn't contain any kind of useful information. So it is very common to remove those words. And let's start by defining a function that will do that for us. And now, before removing the stop words from the sentence that we have, we need of course to define what are the stop words. For that, we'll use stop words assigned to stop words that we imported in the beginning of the notebook. And we defined that we want the stop words in English. And then we create a new column with the cleaned reviews, where we apply this function that we created to remove the stop words that we defined. And now let's take a look at both columns. So we want the review text on the left and the clean review text on the right. And as you can see, there are a couple of words that are missing. As I told you before, the stop words are words that doesn't have really much information, and it is common to be removed in this kind of work. Now, to do the word tokenize, let's take an example that will serve for this and the POS tags. And for that, let's grab an example from the df cleaned review text, and for example the first one. So if we check our example, this is our sentence. To tokenize these words, we will use one of the methods from the NLTK. And now that we have our words tokenized, we can apply the POS tag. Let me show you how. Well, basically now our words are tagged. And what this means? So basically we have a tag for each word that we have here. And if we search any kind of this word or any kind of this tag, this is what you will find. So this is a verb gerund. The first one, playing, and let's say CD. Let's see what CD is. CD is a cardinal digit. So basically this way we can tag our words, which is very important in any kind of natural language processing. This is for several reasons, because first of all, it gives the definition of the word, and it also gives some context in the sentence. Well, and moving on to the sentiment analysis with Vader. This is the part where we'll be applying the sentiment analysis to the reviews that we just collected. And this will be very interesting to see how can we do it. Let me explain. So first of all, we need to import the sentiment intensifier analyzer from the nltk.sentiment. And once you import that, you can start to play around with that. So basically, let's start by checking some examples where we apply this. Let's assign the psi to the sentiment intensifier analyzer, and then using the sentiment intensifier analyzer, we can call the polarity scores. So psi.polarity scores, and we can check a very simple example where the user says that he loves this game. And here we have 4 variables regarding the scores. So we have here the negative sentiment, the neutral, and the positive. And the compound is a metric that evaluates all of these 3 scores. And this compound varies between -1, which is complete negative, and 1, positive. And basically, as you can see, we have 0.63, which is a fairly positive sentiment. So let's say that it is accurate for the sentence that we wrote. And we can check the same for the opposite, so for negatives. Let's say that the user don't like this game, and we if we compute the sentiment, let's say that the most of it is negative. So it has a compound of minus 0.27. And well, basically, we are set to make this for our entire number of reviews. So basically, we can use this sentiment intensifier analyzer to evaluate all the reviews that we just collected. So let's do it. So let's create a new column. Polarity scores, which will have the following. So, and here we select the compound. Review text. Compound is not defined, of course not. So right now it is computing all the scores, and now you can take a look at our data. Here it is, our column polarity scores, which has the score or the compound score for each clean review text. Okay, so we can see here good has a compound score of 0.44. And let's move on to the analysis of these results. And the first thing that I want to do here is to create a new column for the review data. So recommend will be equal to 1 and not recommend will be equal to 0. So the column that we will create will be review value, and we'll use the df review, and we'll replace these values by, let's say, recommended will be 1, while not recommended will be 0. And now we can take a look at the correlation between the review value and the polarity scores. Let's do it. So let's grab the review value and the polarity scores. Now we will compute the correlation. Well, 0.13. It seems that we have a positive correlation between those two variables. However, this is a very low correlation. And now let's create a box plot to take a look at the variability of the values of the polarity score values between the recommended and not recommended. So we'll call the px.box and then the df. In the x-axis we want the, let's say, the review, and the y you want the polarity scores. Well, in here we can see that for the recommended the median is around 0.48, while the median in the not recommended is 0. So these results aren't great, but still we can see here the correlation between those variables, where in the recommended it is higher, the polarity scores are higher, while in the not recommended the polarity scores are lower. Now let's move on to the next visualization, which is kind of interesting. Let's go. It is a word cloud, and for that here is a function to plot it. Now with this function we will plot a word cloud based on the words that we'll give and save it as a PNG. Let's go. So we'll do the plot. We'll call the plot word cloud, and we will pass the df and the reviews, and let's pass the clean reviews. Cloud is not defined, of course. Still not defined because it's not well written. And here it is. This is the word cloud of our reviews. Let's say that the most used word is game, Pal and Pokemon and Pal World came after, and good and fun are positive words that I can see here. Now, if you like Python and games, feel free to check out this video where I use Python to automate League of Legends. Or if you like memes, check out how I created a meme generator using Python. And don't forget to leave a like and a comment with your feedback. I hope to see you around. Peace. Bye.